Hello, audience. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am so excited about this event. I have two great speakers here with me. Speakers, I am going to throw a surprise at you. I didn't prepare you for my icebreaker, but I'm going to do a quick icebreaker today. Audience, while I am doing the icebreaker with our speakers, please go into the chat and let us know where you're calling from. We love to hear from you. So, speakers, let's start with James. I want to ask you, what is your favorite season of the year?
Oh, this is going to be different than most people would say. Winter. I grew up in Vermont, and I love downhill skiing. And I'm right near Tahoe, so we have 700 inches of snow right now. So I'm skiing a lot.
Oh no. Yeah, that's a hot take, I would say. Even though it's winter, I would say that's a hot take. What about you, Sangram?
Well, if you would have asked the question, like, what's the worst season you like? My answer would be the same as James.
Mine too.
So I love spring. It's coming up upon all of us, and can't wait to go on a trip with kids and family out there. So I hope everybody's going to take some time off.
That is fun. I love spring too, but I always get a lot of allergies. I am pretty allergic now. I think it's because spring is coming. We have people from everywhere. We have people from Ireland. Hello there. We have people from Texas, Oregon, New Jersey. Wow, we have people from everywhere. Thank you for joining us, audience. So we are here today to talk about your ICP, and I'm so excited about the key takeaways and all the knowledge the speakers will drop at you today, audience. And please make sure you ask them all your questions. So my name is Eduardo. I am a community events manager in Modern Sales Pros, and I am your host today. Today's event is brought to you by the team at MSP. And for those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there and to help them see around corners they might not know about. And we do that through live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have a robust online forum, we have quarterly summits, and we are getting back into in-person events, which is very, very exciting. If you're not already part of the MSP, you will be invited to join right after this event. And if you like this content, you will love our Revenue Excellence Summit. I am going to put a link in the chat right now so you can sign up for this summit. You can hear from leaders at Sales Loft, Outreach, Gainsight, Stage 2 Capital, plus so much more. It's more than 20 sessions and more than 60 speakers. So sign up today and don't miss out the event of the year. But let's focus on how to get the most out of this event. First of all, this event is being recorded, so you will be able to access all this knowledge at the MSP previous events page and with the key takeaways in there, so you can watch the recording whenever you need it. And also, we have open chat and Q&A session, so please send all your questions to James and Seagram. They love answering questions, so please send them all, and let's make this very, very interactive. Um, and the greatest thing about MSP is that we do not work alone. We have partners. And today we are partnering with Sales Intel to bring this event to you. I have James in here. James is going to give us a little bit of inside knowledge of what Sales Intel is all about. Hey, James.
Hello, Eduardo, and thanks for hosting again, and thanks to everyone out there in the MSP audience for listening in again. Yeah, my name is James Lamberti. I'm the CMO over at Sales Intel. I'll get into explaining Sales Intel in context. I'll put it that way, right? Because I think Sangram and I are going to talk about, um, essentially how it is that I joined about 6 months ago, met Sangram and team, and then have since drunk our own champagne, used Sales Intel's data and intelligence, applied it to this go-to-market operating system you're going to hear about from Sangram. That's just an amazing, clear thought process. You're going to love it. So I'll get into a little bit more about me and Sales Intel at that time.
Awesome. We have a sponsor booth right here, so make sure you're hitting that button, request a demo with our sponsor, so the Sales Intel team can get in touch with you, audience, later today. I'm going to stop sharing my slides. James, are you ready to start
I
sharing your
am all
presentation?
set. All
Awesome.
right, cool.
So I'm going to pass the mic to you. You can introduce yourself, ask Simgurun to introduce himself, and then just kick things off. All right. I'll see you later, after the event.
Thanks, Eduardo. We'll see you at the
Bye.
end. All right. All right. Hello, everybody. And I am here with my man, Sangram. We're going to be presenting today about nailing your ICP, right? And this is the beginning of a journey that I am in the middle of, that I essentially learned a lot of and have been applying with consultation and support from the GTM Partners team and Sangram, who's the CEO over there and the founder. What we're going to do today is go through essentially four agenda items, right? Number one, a brief introduction that I'm going to have Sangram kick off, and he'll introduce himself in that context and talk about why it is we need some go-to-market therapy, especially with the insanity of sort of what's going on in the world economically today, right? For a lot of our businesses. And then we're going to walk through GTM Partners go-to-market OS, their go-to-market operating system, right? Break it down into the 4 steps. We'll have Sangram do a primer on each of those steps. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to follow him and give you a real world example of how we applied, how we actually did this. And of course, we used Sales Intel's data and knowledge to do that. So you'll see that in the process as well. We'll talk about the ROI we've seen to date, very compelling. And then we'll probably take 30 or 40 minutes to do that and end in Q&A. I expect this session is going to have a lot of Q&A because it's this is really worthwhile stuff that we're going to be talking about. So ask questions, engage us. So Sangram, talk about, we're at the couch, we're at the go-to-market therapy couch with you. Take us through why we need to be there.
Well, first of all, everybody got problems. But today we're going to talk about go-to-market problems. And one of the mantras that we collectively have talked about, James, is that most companies are so fixated on marketing problem when the leads go down or revenue numbers are not hitting, or sales is the problem. Let's just change the sales leader and we'll solve all the problems in the world. Doesn't happen ever. We got churn problem. And so, the customer success team is unqualified to have executive conversations. So get them out of the room and get new people to run it. And we keep pointing fingers like we are in middle school. I got middle school kids. So, I hear and see that all the time.
Me too.
Right. And we haven't really grown out of that stage. And our hope and goal is that companies really start talking about that. No, we don't have a marketing or sales or a customer success problem, because if that was the case, then you should be able to solve that problem with that department. But the reality is all of these problems can only be solved when you say that, no, what we have is a go-to-market problems, which means we need marketing, sales, customer success, product, RevOps, enablement teams coming together to find a solution for the problem. Because sometimes it may look like a positioning problem, but it might be that you need to create a new PLG motion for a product that will solve the sales issue. So the answer can come from all of it, not one of it. So that's part of it. And some of the stats, as everybody can read this, is very clear that this is something happens in every single organization. And here's what I found fascinating in one of the research that we did recently as a go-to-market partners research. 48% of the companies are struggling with figuring out what the next quarter is going to look like. And James, you alluded to that earlier. Like, the market has changed so much in 2023. If you are not talking about efficient growth, you're under a rock. It's what every board meeting, every executive conversation is all about.
Yeah. And so that's what led you to found and create go-to-market partners. So now we can get the proper introduction of you and your company and the GTM operating system.
Absolutely. So let's just all establish this. It's broken, and therefore you have a job. Like, that's a good thing. It's, because we are supposed to go and fix it. That's part of our job. And our goal, our mission statement really is that we want to make go-to-market simple, not easy, but simple. And you will see that through the frameworks both James and I share today. And what you see right now is the whole go-to-market operating system. We have been on a at least North America tour. I'm hoping to say world tour, because we're planning to go to London in summer time frame. But we are doing a go-to-market roadshow, and that's where James and we connected, and he's been a huge supporter of it and have been to all these roadshows. We're about to do one in SF this week. And today we're going to focus on just one area, the TRM, the total relevant market. And we're going to walk through that. But these 8-pillar OS is literally a work of labor and love, because it really is pointing to the same thing. None of where you're going to see marketing, sales, customer success anywhere here. This is how go-to-market companies should talk about it. This is what your executive team should talk about it. So we're going to dive deeper in one of this, but there will be links later on for you to download the entire OS, the comprehensive guide, and more deeper insights into the TRM.
Yeah, and I will double click on that, everyone. Sangram and his team are amazing about making this information available to all of us. So at the end, we'll come back to that point, because you're going to want to go get the full operating system. We are going to focus on that first, the total relevant market in today's discussion. And if this goes well and goes as planned, Sangram, and I'll throw it out there that everyone listening in and the team at MSP, we'd love to come back and do this, right, every step of the way. Because introducing myself and Sales Intel in a little more depth, right? So I joined Sales Intel in mid-August as the CMO, right? So I'm about 6 months, a little over 6 months into my tenure here, with a mission to improve and obviously build pipeline, right? And grow the company efficiently and intelligently. And I always had this vehicle, which I referred to, and if you've been to these webinars before and heard me talk, you might have heard me say this, but pipeline generation is a team sport. That was my way of explaining or delivering in a less eloquent way what Sangram was describing, which is it's not all on marketing, it's not all on sales, it's not all on RevOps. Like, you got to be a team and you got to be aligned, right? And so I'm just a couple weeks into my tenure, and I'm at one of the go-to-market partners roadshow events. And Sangram is laying out that OS, and literally he can tell you I was scribbling in the book like furiously. And 2 weeks later, using that framework, I delivered our 6 month, kind of ramp up marketing plan to the company, partnering with sales and RevOps. And now 6 months later, I'm going to share you where we're at and how this is working, and it's empowering and amazing. We're proud of it, but I have to give credit where credit is due to the team at GTM. Sales Intel. So look, you all know who ZoomInfo are. I'm just going to say it like it's a reference point. We are a direct competitor to ZoomInfo, and we've been around for 15 years. Our data's been around for 15 years. We've only recently built a brand and provided that data directly to all of you. Previously, our data, we were providing that data to many of the other competitors in market, right? We now have pulled out of that and are offering directly to you. What we help you do is target the right accounts using technographic, firmographic data, 22 million accounts across 18,000 technology data points, a vital data set for actually doing what we're going to talk about today. Knowing who's in market, intent, surfacing in market customers is vital. There's intent data, news data, website resolution, who visits your websites and resolving them. And then when you've identified your addressable market, when you know which of that addressable market is available today, we can give you the actionable contacts you need. And then finally, no one out there in the market, no B2B provider has all the data you need. The difference in our world is that we have a research on demand team, 2,000 person strong team, operates as an extension of your team to go fill gaps. I think that's a really important and very earnest part of our brand is we're not going to have everything you need. No one is, but you should be prospecting, not researching. So leverage us to do that. So now I want to jump in and explain a concept before I hand it back to Sangram. TAM, SAM, SOM. I love this topic in the world of go-to-market because like if you talk to like a founder, a young founder trying to raise money, right? They're going to point to that TAM bucket and be like, look at our TAM. It's $11 gazillion, right? And you're going to try to drive investment. That doesn't serve actual go-to-market very well, right? And this is where the TAM, SAM, SOM concept is so important to understand. Your TAM can be billions of dollars. Great. But TAM is about what you could potentially address in the entire market you live in when you have a fully mature product and when you have a fully staffed team and fully funded marketing budget, right? If you start trying to harvest your TAM before you zeroed in on your sales addressable market, and even more importantly, what people call a service obtainable market, you're going to be very inefficient. You're going to struggle. You might burn a lot of money, and you'll be in that vicious cycle that Sangram described at the outset of this call. So this has been sort of the model that people have thought of, and I have to tell you, getting down to that SOM is vital. But it's that SOM has to be about where do I win efficiently? That is your addressable market. That is your ICP. And that is step one of the go-to-market OS. So I'm going to hand it back, Sangram, to you. We're on step one, defining your addressable market. Break it down for us. Tell us overall how we go about doing this.
And I love what you just went through, because I think every organization needs to do it. And this is your 4-step to the TAM, but really TRM, the total relevant market. And so let's just create that distinction right off the bat. The idea of TAM sounds really good. I'm a founder of Terminus, so I remember going to and raising money. That's the conversation you have TAM about, right? To your investors, because they want to see how much money you can put in the organization so that they might get 3x, 5x, 10x return. So you say, we got a $5 billion marketplace. When the rubber meets the road, for people like me and James and all of you, we are a hand-to-hand combat. We need to close 100 deals a year. So you don't need 10,000. You need 100 right accounts to go after in order to drive your business forward. So everybody needs to really recognize the context of when you talk about TAM and when you talk about TRM. So that's what we're focused on, is TRM, total relevant market. How do you go and close more deals that you need to create efficient growth in 2023? So first things first, this is a 4-step process. And again, there's a link later on. You can read this free, download it for free. We want to give it away. This whole model that we built. The biggest challenge that I see, James, out there is people stop and do this whole process of ICP, which sounds like, oh, ICP, like, didn't I do that like long time ago? Why do I have to do it again? People stop, do it once, and they stop.
Yep.
And that is one of the biggest problems for companies. So when you came in your organization, I feel like that was like, if you coming in new and starting that process over was one of the best things that you did as a service to the organization, because we need to constantly talk through this, because products are changing, markets are changing, your competitors are changing, they're launching new products. So your ICP needs to change. So most of you, if you have done ICP once and have stopped and said, oh, I got that, you're wrong. You need to go back in your organization and redo it, and you will find new changes. So not only that, every time you launch a new go-to-market motion, for example, let's say all of a sudden you're launching PLG motion. Guess what? You need to go back to your ICP. Who would this be for? If you want to go and launch, instead of inbound and outbound, you're going community-led, or like what we're doing with and saying, I want to go work more with modern sales pros. It's a community-led growth market. Well, if that's the motion, then you have to again look at who would be the right people in that and how would I engage them. So this whole model that we're going to go through step by step is really a precursor to be done every so often whenever there's a material change in your organization.
Right.
So here's really quick. We're going to go through this, because what you're going to find out, folks, is that once we go through this, and it might look like all of these things, James is going to bring it home towards the end by showing how he's actually done at Sales Intel. And I personally am like super, super excited for that. So some of this are going to be basics. Again, a lot more detail out there in it. But here's another area where firmographics. People look at revenue, industry, employee count, locations, and they, again, just stop right there. They don't go any further. They stop and do not include any technographics, which really is a big problem. If you are not looking at complementary intelligence, and I'm curious, James, if you see this all the time, where like, well, people do firmographics but stop at techno, and the problem that it causes.
Yeah, I mean, so we when we first start working with a lot of our clients and prospects, I would say two things. Number one, everyone still talks about TAM. I've got this giant market. I'm right away. I'm like, red flags. Okay, you're not going to be very efficient. So number two, the second thing we hear is, oh, we've got an ICP. It's, a couple of firmographic data points. And again, red flags, right? We can help, but all this other data has to come in to bear, right? The technographics, a lot of the other things you mentioned here, the qualifying characteristics, the readiness to buy, right? Signals, the signals of buying intent are also super valuable, super important.
Yeah. Well, one of the one that I will point out over here is the qualifying characteristics, something that I did not consider really important in my early days as a marketer, where like, wait a minute, if you're selling, let's say a licensing where it's by seats, if that's your business model, like Salesforce or some of it, then this is very important for you to know, like, oh, how many members are there? And so you need to look at that beyond the firmographics. You could be in the right size company, but not the team that you're selling to is not the same size as the big company. Then you're going against the wind. So these things, when put together right, that really makes you intelligent. And what's really important for you to know that you need to create this for each major segment or each major go-to-market motion. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is not a cookie cutter thing where you do once and it is done. It will change, and it must change if you want to have efficient growth by motion and by segment you go after.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll emphasize, I'd love for you to work with Sales Intel, obviously, on this point, but let me just say, this data is available. Like, this is not like, this isn't your B2B intelligence market of 5 or 10 years ago, right? This data is available. It can be striped to your existing world, your existing CRM very, very effectively. And we'll talk more about that. But put it this way, the barriers to getting this done quickly and thoughtfully with detail, those barriers are gone, right? And I think that's the world we now live in. So I would really encourage people to lean in and get this data, right, to take this first step. So let's talk about the second step.
Yeah, well, so here is really interesting one. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, James. You know that at the roadshow as well. It's all about NRR. So quick definition over here. If you are not familiar with it, NRR is net revenue retention. What does it mean? It means that you're not only are acquiring customers, which is typically ARR, annual recurring revenue. You're also retaining customers, which would be GRR, which is gross revenue retention. But the third one, which is net revenue retention, means that you're not only acquiring, retaining, but you're growing with your existing customer base. I remember this conversation with Yamini Rangan, CEO of HubSpot. We were on a podcast, and I said, Yamini, you're a public company CEO. What is your number one metric? I thought she would say, Sangram, don't give me this trick question. There's no one metric. I'm a public company CEO. I got like 5, 10, 15 SKUs and 1,000 sales reps, like at 100,000 customers. I don't have one, but no. James, she literally directly looked at me in my eyes and said, Sangram, the number one metric that I care about, that I look at every day or every month and report on to the board is NRR. It tells me the health of the business. And when I went back and did the math on it, here is the crazy math. If your NRR is over 100%, which is what we're deeming as best in class, in an efficient growth market where net new customer might be hard for you to go, but it might be easier for you to expand with existing customers and existing business units that you might be talking to, where you need all this data that James and I just talked about. You can grow. You can double your revenue every 5 years without even adding a net new customer. So when you do the math on it, you understand it's a true business metric and not another fun metric to talk about.
Yeah, it's ultimately the definition of efficiency is NRR, right? And I'm amazed at how often we encounter and we move into engagements with people, and it's about ARR, it's about pipeline, ARR, and of course, totally makes sense, right? But very few conversations about NRR, right? And it's I think that's going to change really, really quickly, especially in this. I think economy, growth at all costs is no longer the mantra, right? NRR is by definition about being efficient, right? That's why it's so important as a metric.
Big time.
Yeah, and then this one is I think teeing up how we apply this. It may seem a little complex to people right now, or a little like, I don't know, academic. And trust me, when you see how this is applied, it's really simple. It is simple. So explain this concept, Sangram.
Well, so here is the big deal with why customer comparison is so important. I have seen this over and over again where people confuse between what our true customer segment is all the time. We'll say, well, we're just in enterprise. Oh, we're just in SMB. Oh, we're just in mid-market. Well, you need to go deeper than that. You need to really look at the whole segmentation, all right, and you need to find the sweet spot for your company. So, and this is an example where, all right, and these are real examples. Like, this is not something just created fictitiously, but you can really think through this. Is, well, when you think about between the orange one and kind of the light blue, I'm colorblind, so the green, whatever the color that is, in the middle is really where you need to focus on, because that is your sweet spot. Right now, if efficient growth is really what you're thinking about, if you haven't done an ICP comparison and saying, well, we know these ICP is really good for us, and that those reps say that the other one, which is in this case, let's say fintech, manufacturing, HR, we really do well in it. But in reality, you might be, if you go back and look at your existing customer base and like, whoa, we do great in security. We do great when it's less than 20 seats. We do great for this type of intent behavior. When you find that out, my gosh, I've seen companies soar only because they were able to pinpoint where to focus on. So the customer comparison is really to help you understand where you're going to bet the most amount of your resources in this next incredibly hard year.
And this is exactly what we did when I was in the room listening to you. We went and did this exercise. So let me jump in. So say steps 1 and 2. Let's talk about how we applied it. Okay. So at Sales Intel, who do we involve, how, and why? Right. So when Sangram laid out those first 2 steps, we kind of skipped over. It's in the full white paper, available for free. But there's a key dimension of forming the team. Who's going to go after this, right? And this is where that pipeline generation as a team sport concept comes into play. If you involve all these groups, or however many you have, right, you're probably going to have at a minimum customer success and sales. You probably have someone in marketing, and you probably have somebody in RevOps, right? Involve that core team of people, because you need everyone to be involved and own the outcome, right? And own that definition and quantification of where you land. Everyone being involved means that everyone feels ownership. So I want to state right at the beginning, like, even if it's just one person representing each of these functions, having them take this down right together and sharing out with the rest of the team in a collaborative way until you come to a decision will get the alignment you need. And it is so empowering, right? Because there's no more finger pointing. Everyone knows, like, this is our market, right? So what we did, RevOps, right? So on the RevOps side, they were really all about our existing data in the CRM. Close won, close lost, days to close, win rates, ACV, and 3-year lifetime value. And then in our case, when I joined, it forced us to go through, and this is a good outcome, right? It forced a really healthy CRM cleanup. And so that alone led to some goodness from a RevOps perspective, not to mention the value of going through this process. Now, customer success, we have a CSM platform, right? Customer success management platform that lives independent of our CRM. The customer success team is involved to look at what customers expanded, what customers retained, just kind of a flat. They're good customers, but they're not growing. What customers churned. We had NPS for each of our customers that we were tracking relatively routinely and regularly and had good data on. And then, of course, usage, right? Both seats and usage. And what we learned here is that this is, again, part of being in a growth company, a smaller company, right? The CSM data was independent of the CRM data. That led to the realization that key metrics needed to merge from the CSM to the CRM in order for us to maintain and repeat this process that Sangram mentioned. And then marketing is where we'll get into this, but we drank our own champagne. Like on the marketing side, as the CMO Sales Intel, I have 22 million accounts with technographics, 18,000 technographic data points, firmographic data points. I have multiple intent signals, including Bombora's full access to Bombora. I have all the personas and titles of my own contacts, including from Sales Intel as well as our own CRM, right? And then this was interesting. I wanted to consider our customers, all of you, right? Our customers, their ICP, right? So it's not about what vertical all of you are in, right? Some of you are in, I don't know, who knows what vertical you're in, right? But who do you sell to, right? Who's your ICP? That's the data that we need to have on your behalf. So what was interesting is to know and understand your ICP. And then, of course, sales was really more of qualitative, right? Who are the budget holders? Who are the influencers? So that's where, if you go back to Sangram's point here, right? These qualifying characteristics mainly came from sales, right? That's what I was describing there. So, I mean, Sangram, I think this pretty much followed your roadmap of your white paper, right? More or less. I mean, I don't know if you'd add anything to this, but this is what we did.
Well, what I'm getting up on this one is the fact that most companies, if we can get a poll on or have people just comment, how many of you guys have done this? How many of you have actually got your sales, marketing, customer success, and RevOps actually together? How many of you are still working on sales and marketing meeting as the go-to-market meeting, which is a complete lie, because that is not your go-to-market meeting. It is your RevOps and customer success need to be in there now more than ever. So the fact that you're doing it the way you're doing it, of course, you're getting the outcomes like this because you have a holistic view now of what's happening in your organization to make business decisions.
Yeah. And everyone owns the outcome. It's been amazing. So this is what we did. We had 6 segments. This is why this is not that challenging, right? I mean, you know what customers are expanding. You know what customers are retained, even if it's living in a Google Drive doc somewhere, right? You can get that information. Who churned? What accounts did we win? What accounts did we lose? 5 segments. We got it down to 5 segments. And then mainly what we leveraged was the internal CRM data that I described, right? NPS, ACV, lifetime value, users usage, their titles. We had some disposition data. Why did someone expand? Why did someone churn, right? What were the reasons around this to describe it and could be quantified a little bit? And then what I call the sales intel champagne, drinking your own champagne, our own data that I've already mentioned, right? So this is the data we ultimately used. And the key thing is that left side. Those are the 5 segments. And this is work we did directly with Sangram's team in a work session, right? We looked at this together, if you recall, Sangram back in November, right? Yep. This is where we landed. What we learned, this is that Venn diagram. What we learned is that our relevant market 2023 is a $792 million market. That's a huge market, right? We got plenty of work to do, right? Right. If I can grab 10% of that this year, that's $79 million. I'm an amazing growth company, which is what we're going to do, right? But what we learned is that we're dominant in a couple areas with our product and people. We're unbelievably good in the U.S. market, right? When we try to get into Latin America or Asia, we don't have the data. We have some, but those deals we're going to be an add-on, right? We're going to help, but primarily, we are the best data provider in the U.S. market. And so anyone focusing on the U.S. market is going to see us as a really great partner. 20 verticals. Again, I should say 20 ICPs. We realized that, and that was one of the most important things. Where do we have the data? If we have the data where you need us to have it, we're obviously going to be a great partner versus when we don't. We know exactly which of those 20 verticals are and where we have better data than our competition. Company size, I didn't want to put the exact numbers, but it was basically we are extremely good in the mid-market, right? Mid-sized companies that have growing sophistication in their marketing, right? They're not massive enterprises. There we add on, will help, right? But for mid-market players, we are an amazing foundational partner, right? And so that's what we learned. And what we saw on the right, when we dialed in that Venn diagram, right? When I say that Venn diagram, just to remind everyone, Sangram, what I'm sharing in the data is what your illustration here, that middle overlap of the Venn diagram there, right? It ended up being here, 26,324 companies. I can name every single one of them, and I can't name them personally. but they're in our CRM.
Yeah. You know what's awesome about this, James, is people are looking at this. This process takes effort. This is not about just money or anything like this. This takes effort. This takes ability for you to take pause and say, all right, folks, we're just not going to run with our head cut off like chickens.
Yeah.
We are going to pause for a second. We are going to validate some assumptions here and get it. And I can't wait when you get to the outcome of this thing, is because this itself is the starting point to have a better outcome. This itself, hopefully everybody can feel it. Like, if this wasn't a great outcome of clarity and alignment and team that you put together, the outcome of this one is going to be clearly a much better outcome as a business, because you now have the clarity you need.
Yeah. And now we're operating this way, right? And that's the point. And win rates are higher, ACV is higher, retention rate is higher. We know our sweet spot now. And as a company or a lead comes in, when I'm talking with that team that you saw back here, right? And to your point, Sangram, we all know what winning looks like and what good looks like. We're just talking about how do we get better, right? How do we get to this part of the market? And then we added 2 new buying centers. So historically, the company had been all about sales leaders. We're a contact data company. Well, reality is we weren't valuing our whole product, right? We realized that we weren't expressing and positioning sales intel with all the incredible account data we have, all the intent data we have, right? And then adding the contact data. So we are now able to open up at the same company. We go from 1 buying center sales to 3. That's huge, right? I have 3 opportunities. And then what it means for go-to-market. This is, I think, I want to ask you to talk about more about this in a minute, Sangram, because you did talk about this a lot. But what this means for us is we obviously, all of us are going to still get leads from outside the ICP, right? Outside your relevant market. Question is, how do you resource around that? What do you do when that happens, right? And so for us, we understand very clearly how to resource the red, right? If it's a red customer, it's a smaller customer, right? And that's not bad. And there's a lot of great customers in that segment. You might be one of them, right? But if you are, you're probably savvy, right? Yeah. You're probably savvy in what you're doing as an individual, right? And you're decisive about how you're going to work with us. I mean, that's just the reality, right? If it's indecision and it goes on and on, like, you know what? When you're ready, come to us. We'll be here. But we want to focus the resourcing, right? We have to run a business. And then up in the large enterprise side, you heard me talk about this. Everyone loves the whale hunting. Like, it's a glamorous thing for a new company to go after the whales. We're going to hunt whales. We're going to bring down enterprises. Is your product ready? Right? In our case, what we realized is like we're an amazing add-on solution. We can be a huge complement to a lot of the data providers that a massive multinational enterprise might have, especially in the U.S. market. And that's how we handle that part of the market. And then we can give everyone what you need in that sweet spot. So this to me is important because it's Sangram, and I'd love you to talk about that, because this is about operationalizing the ICP. It's not just about identifying. What do you do with the resources in the back end?
Yeah. And I'll just say this, so we can make, in the interest of time, get to the second half of this, or second part of this, is there is a really important distinction to be made right now for everybody to recognize that if you as a team cannot immediately articulate what your sweet spot is as an organization, I can promise you that your content is not talking to them. It's probably talking to everybody, which is why the quality is not there. I can promise you that your salespeople are not going after the right ones, which means you just have a lot of burned revenue in your organization. I can also promise you, based on so much research and companies that we work for, you're not even focused on the verticals where you are the strongest. As a result of this, poor competitors are actually taking your market share that you should be totally winning just by walking in those deals. That happens all the time, and we cannot emphasize enough in this conversation as James and I, as leaders in marketing world, is, gosh, get this right. You will be so much more specific on everything to do, and you will learn and have the power to say, no, we don't need to go after healthcare right now because we got a big market insecurity right now. That is a conversation I hope companies have, or you have in your organization.
Yeah. And then, to add, sugar to the cream, to goodness, right? That $72 million is still a big net to cast, But one of the things that we've done very effectively, and you can do as well, is we know within that addressable market which 135 million are in market now using intent. We'll come back to this point, but the use of intent signals now is a really important, because once you identified that ideal addressable market, knowing which of that market is like currently right now looking for you is possible, and of course a whole nother level of efficiency you can gain. So there's two more steps, and then we'll get to the punchline and leave some time for Q&A. But securing the data, I think this is a really helpful framework, Sangram. So take us through these categories.
This is almost a mental framework for everybody to recognize, all right, we're getting a data overload. We don't know which data is important. We don't know where to start. If I don't have a data, then what do I have? Or if I have the data, what kind of data do I have? Like, that's what the answer of this is. Hopefully you can print this out and then look at it and see where the gaps are in your organization and what technologies can help. So we're trying to be just very informative and value. And thanks, Sales Intel, you didn't just drop in your name everywhere. You are being very intentional about where your name is, so you can see how authentic this is. Yep.
Yeah.
So the first one, like, clearly the buyer intent is all about what is observable data. This is the data that you can observe and look at where really the buyers are buying. Like, you think about, I'll let James speak on this one in a second on where Sales Intel drops in. But G2 is a great example of that. Well, people are buying. They're looking at G2 to look at a category to buy. So it makes perfect sense. It's an observable intent. Engagement data is first-party data. With all of these technologies that are lifted out, just a few of them, they're all first-party. They're just gonna give you the first party. You're gonna have the authority for you to market to them. So you need that. The third one is all the firmo, techno, all the market intelligence. Like, this is where you're like, oh, let me figure out, is this the right company? What is all the data that James talked about that got him to the sweet spot? This is a key ingredient for that. If you don't have that, then you're not necessarily figuring out where to go. And you can see the players there. The fourth one, the account management one, is all of your ABM players, if you will, or another way to look at it is account level. How do I look at it at the account level? So I'm not just focused on leads that are coming in randomly from other places. Are these leads for the right accounts that I need to go after? Or are these leads that I just need to keep nurturing and keep it on the side? Where do I focus my effort? And the last one, it's really mapping and scoring. And we'll go into scoring in a second, but mapping all of these things. The biggest challenge companies have faced outside of just figuring out what data is right and getting good data is the fact that they're not even sometimes we're not mapping the good data to the right accounts. So your sales team is not smart enough to know, oh, so-and-so James now is one of the account person I'm reaching out, but I didn't even know. And now James downloaded something and it needs to be mapped to my account so I can go after it. So all of these are really important pieces of data. So know where the data is, qualify the data, see the gaps, and figure out where you need to fit the right technology.
Yeah. And then we've already covered this, but these are the data. This is the data we use. We use a lot of drank our own champagne, right? With the firmographics, technographics, intent signals, contacts and personas, and then the data gaps. And that was in addition to all of our own CRM data, right? And then last step here, and then we'll get to showing the results. 6 months later, we applied this. And I know you're excited about that, but this is important because I don't think people do this. I mean, again, this is where you can do rudimentary scoring and scaling very quickly, right? And the capabilities exist within a lot of the technologies you just referenced. We all probably have this ability today, but take us through scoring and scaling example.
So this can be as simple or as complicated you want to make it. And I would err on the side of just making it enough where you are hitting the mark. You're getting to a place where you can do it. But why is this important? Most companies do lead scoring, but they don't do account scoring. Big difference there. What's happening over here is you're doing an account scoring. You're looking at not only a hot lead and, oh, it's a hot lead, go after that. No. It's very specific. In this example, a company that has Salesforce versus HubSpot CRM. You're giving a score like, hey, the CRM is no longer the most important thing. Knowing which CRM is more important, and therefore a higher score, because you may be able to close better, faster. You may have better integrations with them. You have better customer testimonials for it. So you're scoring for that specific one hub. I have faced that myself in my last company when, founder of Terminus, is that our Salesforce customers, if it's a Salesforce customers versus a CRM or Sugar or HubSpot, 10 times more faster close rate on that one, because we just had that integration. So figuring out the scoring again. So the keyword here's the keyword: be specific. You can see everything in here. It's not about just CRM or industry. It is which technographic, which firmographic, and you can be specific on the amount of score you would give it. So in this case, clearly company B is winning, and if you put more effort in it, the chances or propensity for you to win that deal is much higher than company A. And that's what you got to do in order to prioritize.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't fully build it out, but the firmographic is there. This is the key thing for this is the account aspect, right? So if we go into what we did, right, the reason I think, Sangram, that so many people are still on the lead level is because historically, like 5 years ago, the scoring model was marketing activity, right? It was lead based, and it was contact based, and it was all about marketing activity, right? Titles and personas. Are they engaging? Are they opening? Are they clicking? Do they download the white paper? Did they come to this webinar, right? And then there'd be an MQL date, and that would get sent to sales, and sales would try to close it, and if it didn't, it would come back and you'd recycle or re-engage, right? Yeah. The reality today is that there are two additional scoring dimensions, right? Both are account-based, right? One is what we call at Sales Intel. We certainly track marketing activity, of course, but we have the account fit score, and it's specific, and it's exactly what Sangram talked about in his experience at Terminus. We face the same thing. We have areas where our integrations are awesome, and we have areas where you got to use our APIs. It's easier to close where our integrations are super tight, and we know those technologies. Intent signals is another one. That's a third model. So in our system, there are 3 individual models: account fit score, intent score for those that account fit score, and the marketing activity. Together, that forms our model, and it's really powerful. The money slide. 6 months later, when I joined in Q3, where we sit today, our inbound leads are up 60% in 6 months. Cost per lead has dropped 60%. Why? Because I am taking the 26,000 accounts and all the contacts that I can gather, and I'm using them to load my DSP. I'm using them to drive all my native work, right, through LinkedIn, through Meta, et cetera. Even more importantly, all my content marketing is pointing at and talking to those 26,000 companies. And where I've gotten the most benefit is actually on the organic side, SEO and content, because we're speaking to people, right? And all of you listening around, you'll know it, right? Because you'll recognize that it's resonating, right? And we're going to have a chance to convert you at some point. And then finally, inbound pipeline contribution, like for a business like ours, right? This is a high velocity competitive market, right? There are a lot of providers out there, right? So we have to be efficient on the marketing side, and we're going from 25 to 55%. So it's been really, really encouraging to see this. And then second ROI slide here before we go to Q&A and wrap up. Are we hitting the ICP, right? This is ultimately we're doing all this work. Are we hitting the ICP? And here's what's so interesting, right? Our overall lead composition has not yet foundationally changed since when I started. Meaning, if 100 leads come in, and what percentage we're actually in the target market, we're in that addressable market, we're in that ICP. It's the same now as it was 6 months ago. And the reason is it takes a little while, right? For my position to make it into the market and for that content to really start to bring it in, that part is going to be slower. It doesn't mean we haven't had incredible ROI gains. Why? Because as I mentioned, we now know where we win. And so our resourcing of how we handle all of that stuff is different on the back end. So our sales team's getting more efficient. And then on the marketing side, as you saw, change in marketing is a lot easier to achieve than retraining a sales team on a process, emotion, selling to a new persona, right? That's a hard thing to do. On the marketing side, I can be much quicker to change. And so the improvement we're seeing in marketing is much more significant. But when I say efficiency, I mean, when I spend a dollar, right, I've improved 2x the ROI of that dollar. That's what I mean by that number.
Wow. I mean, so James, if I could double click on this one, both these slides, 21, 22, as we wrote the money slide and hitting ICP. I mean, those are the right titles, but I hope that nobody misses your key point there. You haven't spent more money to get what you want. You haven't created personas to do that. You haven't asked for more headcount to do that. This is the conversation that you want to have with your CEO and your executive team that will give you the opportunity to do a lot more. You have earned the right with the team to say, all right, now we can do more with this team. So it is beautiful to see this in action. Yeah, it's really, really cool. We're going to keep going. So closing thoughts, Sangram, and thanks for doing this today. It's always inspiring to hear from you. So I love this. Oh man, it's inspiring to me to see this in action at companies, because the OS, it's been a while since there's a new framework out in the marketplace where people can look at it. We all remember the demand waterfall and that funnel, or the topo double funnel. So we believe this Flip my funnel. I remember that one. Flip my funnel. Yeah, I had a small part to play in that one. But we believe that this is the new way. This is the way where companies and boardrooms and executive teams will bring that entire executive team and say, well, what does our market look like? And honestly, James, what you would see at the roadshow right now, we are helping companies to have their entire go-to-market on one slide using these 8 pillars. So I can't wait for that to be in board decks and presentations for people. Yeah. And look, like I said, we both very freely offer up knowledge and information. You've got a great white paper, right? Yeah, this is the whole thing that we just talked about. It's in 10 times more detail in that in the TRM guide, and we're building a new guide for each one of these 8 pillars over the months. If you download that, you will obviously get entered into just sending. We don't do mass emails other than when we do research work, and that's because we are a research firm, so we don't have anything to nurture but actual great content to nurture. It's not a blog, it's actual research work. So you can download that, and I know, James, you guys have a few research. Yeah, and we also have available from ICP to revenue growth. This is really about, and a lot of what I talked about I map out here, right, which is it really is in large ways the application of the GTM operating system, and then also a buyer's guide, right? It's just there's a lot of myth and I guess snake oil in the world of data. So we really think that it's helpful to have you break it down and understand what quality means and how to evaluate your provider. So that's all there. And I will leave you with this, for anyone listening in, if you want to get a little taste of sales intel, we have an offer for you. You can get a list of contacts from 5 companies that are currently searching for your competitor solution. Pretty cool. So we'll make that offer to you as part of our thanks to the MSP crew and community. And with that, we've got a few minutes for Q&A. Why don't we use it, right? Eduardo, do you want to come back on here, and I'll stop sharing?
Hi, that was awesome. I see so many comments in here. James is saying, well done, guys. Roy said, thank you both. It was great information, very useful. Let's jump into some questions. Jonathan asked earlier, can we speak more about technographics? Jonathan, if you can expand in that. While Jonathan is typing out the full question, let's answer Victoria's. Victoria said, I am in marketing and we are driving the ABM motion. How do you make sure each of these teams, sales, customer success, RevOps, are invested? What are some best practices to start engaging with these teams and fold them in without it seeming like marketing is pushing an agenda?
Oh, James, why don't you share how you're doing it? I'm happy to jump in on this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So first of all, this might come as a surprise from the guy who talked about ABM for 8 years. Stop saying ABM in your organization. Here's why. A lot of times, if sales fully don't get it, they will think that it's an ABM, account-based marketing. So marketing's is the one who's driving it. They don't feel really skin in the game. Instead, I would just call it either go to market, or we would call it a marketing meeting if it is just with sales. But a lot of times I'll recommend just calling it a go to market meeting. So now everybody is coming in with like, well, we are all go to market. So everybody gets that. Number two, find one or two salespeople and make them heroes in your organization. Find and ask these two questions. Number one, tell me your top deals that you need to close in the next 30, 60, 90 days. They will tell you what deals they need to, because their job depends on that. So once you find that, do the most unscalable thing you can. Find out what you can do as a marketer to help them win those deals. Forget the marketing plan and the program and the webinars and whatever you're doing. Figure out what you can do for those 3 to 5 deals for those 2 reps. You make them, help them win, or at least move them in the right direction. They will tell about you to the entire sales team. You never have to sell a thing to marketing sales team again. They would be the one saying, do that for my entire sales organization. And then you change the game there.
Yeah. I call that, I branded it internally, the demand center. It's just fun internal branding, go-to-market meeting. We call it the demand center. It's where we once a week, all the constituents, demand gen, sales leadership, BDR leadership, RevOps leadership, and maybe a marketing person. It's a small team. We get together every week. We look at data, how are we doing, and we say, how are we going to get better, right? Yep. But in order to have that conversation, even when you're doing really highly targeted marketing, like an ABM or ABX approach, the process we just talked about will be so empowering, and it'll engage all those other constituents. They'll be part of the process. And as soon as people are part of the process, they take ownership of the outcome and they believe in it. Yep. Right? When you can define for them, this is the market we're going. You told us these are the characteristics. These are the deals you need. This is where we win. All we're doing is playing back, right? Those customers that are in market now, content that speaks to them, and we're going to help a couple of you win deals. Like Sangram just said. So great question.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see another one here from Caroline. We are focused on thin slice of 3 verticals, very small SAM. Considering your ICP framework, how do you think about ICP expansion? As in, what is the next vertical? Let me share this question right here so you can all see.
Yeah.
James, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. So it's actually the way we end up mapping it out. When you have all this data, what you tend to get is concentric circles. Think of it as concentric circles, right? In the middle of that circle is probably where you are today, right? It's the 3 verticals. It's the SAM you've got, right? There's probably some radiation out from there where you're not bright red, like super precise. It's the perfect fit. But there's one layer of maybe moderate fit, good fit, and that can be a direction for where you need to build product, right? That can be a direction for maybe expertise or people you need to hire. That can be a direction for content you need to develop, right? Yeah. So when you do the analysis the way at least we did it, we know what's next. We already know.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if you go through the process, you'll end up in the same place.
Yeah. And another way to think about it are adjacent markets is just the same way you look at adjacent verticals. Every time we've done this exercise with any organization, we found very similar results. It's kind of crazy to say that when you've done so many of these, is that you haven't gone deep enough on your customer base. If that's where you are, either you have too few customers or you haven't gone deep enough. Because when you go deep enough in your customer base, and even if you have like 30, 40, 50 customers, you'll be able to see what the adjacent verticals look like. And that's when you start figuring out, okay, well, my ICP is this. I feel really good about security, but I'm starting to see manufacturing come up. I'm starting to see finance come up. And now you start testing with those ICP. That really is vertical-based marketing is such a important concept in 2023. If people are not embracing it, you're missing out on the most important way to create efficient growth.
Awesome. I don't think we have any more time for questions. Audience, thank you so much for your participation. You are the best part of MSP. Sangram, James, thank you so much for all the knowledge you dropped here today. I see that the audience really loved the content. Audience, once more, while the speakers and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that the recording is available on our website, and you will receive a follow-up email with the link for the recording, all the links that I dropped in the chat with the offering from James and Sangram. So make sure to check the email later today, and have a nice week ahead. The speakers and I will hang out backstage, and audience, you can go and enjoy your day and apply all the things that you learned here today to your company.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.